They say ignorance is bliss, and maybe they are right, because once you see it, you cannot unsee it. From a very young age, you are taught a comforting idea that if enough people complain, something has to happen. That volume eventually becomes authority, that numbers turn into power. So the modern system offers you something that looks like influence, a clean interface, a reassuring government logo, a big green button that says sign, and this is how it's sold. The petition system is sold like democracy, with a loyalty card. You're told very earnestly that if enough of you sign the same digital clipboard, the government will be forced to listen, which is optimistic at best, because that's not how power has ever worked at any point in recorded history. Power doesn't respond to signatures, power responds to consequences. If petitions worked, governments wouldn't host them on their own websites. That's like robbing a bank, then asking the bank to count how many people agree it was a good idea. And notice how they always say, this will be considered for debate, not acted on, not voted on, considered, like a suggestion box. That feeds directly into a shredder with Wi-Fi. Now, to understand how perfectly this works, you have to look at the scale. In 2025 alone, the UK petition system recorded numbers that would terrify any organisation that actually had to respond to its customers. Over 3 million people signed a petition calling for a general election. Nearly 3 million opposed the introduction of digital ID cards. More than 1 million called for an immediate general election. Hundreds of thousands demanded repeal of the Online Safety Act. Hundreds of thousands opposed asylum support. Hundreds of thousands demanded mass deportations or offshore detention. On almost every major public concern, the public didn't whisper. They shouted, they filled the room. They exceeded any reasonable threshold of clear public opinion. And yet the outcomes didn't change, because the purpose was never outcome. You know, they frame petitions as participation, but it's actually emotional outsourcing. You know, you're not influencing policy, you're being given a place to put your frustration so it doesn't spill into anything inconvenient. It's politics with padded walls. You feel involved, you feel heard, and nothing changes. Which is perfect, because the system doesn't need you silent. It just needs you busy. You're not challenging power. You're updating a spreadsheet. That's why thresholds exist. Not to trigger action, but to trigger closure. Once the number is reached, the system doesn't panic, it relaxes, because now it knows exactly how many people are upset, and more importantly, that those people have chosen the safest possible outlet, a click. And then comes the response, polite, measured, emotionally anaesthetised. The government recognises the strength of feeling, which means we notice the volume, not we felt pressure, not this created consequences, just noticed. And here's where it gets genuinely unsettling, because sometimes the petitions don't just get ignored, sometimes they quietly disappear. There was a UK petition showing majority public opposition to recognising Palestine as a state, large numbers, clear sentiment, recorded, acknowledged, logged, and then, after the government proceeded in the opposite direction. The evidence became strangely hard to find, not highlighted, not promoted, not easily accessible, if available at all. Which raises an uncomfortable question. If a petition exists to record public opinion, and the opinion becomes politically inconvenient, and the record becomes difficult or impossible to locate, what exactly is the system preserving? Because if the government can quietly remove or bury evidence of public opposition, then petitions aren't just powerless, they're editable, and that should worry everyone, regardless of which side of any issue you're on. They can remove the memory, they can control what remains visible, they can decide which opinions survive as history and which quietly expire. At that point, the petition system stops being a democratic archive and starts looking like a curated museum exhibit. Only the exhibits change. Think about it. Throughout the entirety of history, can you name one war that was won by the wrong side, by the bad guys? History is written by those with the power to create whatever narrative they wish to. This is why the platform still exists, not because it constrains power, but because it documents compliance, not replicating reality, but now a new version of the recorded truth. It allows officials to say, truthfully, we consulted the public. What they don't say is, and then we did, exactly what we planned anyway. Because the petition didn't fail, it worked perfectly, it collected dissent, it contained it, it logged it, and when necessary, it forgot it. And that is the real function of modern petitions, not to force change, but to prove that resistance was safely processed. And once you understand that, the rest of the system starts making a lot more sense. If petitions are the quiet version of participation, protests are the loud one. Same idea, different outfit, much worse shoes. From the outside, protests look dangerous. Crowds, chants, streets blocked, helicopters hovering overhead, like something meaningful might happen.
Historic scenes today. Thousands have taken to the streets. Democracy in action.
And for a moment, it feels real. It feels like power might actually flinch. Then Monday arrives, mass protests are just petitions with better cardio. Millions of people show up, shut down cities, make noise, disrupt everything, and the response is the same template. Email, just read on camera, because numbers alone don't scare systems built to outlast generations. They've already done the maths. They know most people have jobs on Monday.
We respect the right to protest, but disruption will not be tolerated. Please return to work safely.
That sentence alone tells you everything. They don't say, we are afraid. They say, wrap it up. The uncomfortable joke, hiding in plain sight. If your protest needs permission, it's already approved as harmless. You are not challenging power, you are renting pavement.
Your protest license is valid from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. Please chant responsibly.
That's not rebellion, that's a booking. Power doesn't panic at crowds, it panics at organisation, persistence and consequences. 1 million people shouting once is loud, a smaller number refusing to go away is dangerous. That's why you get parades tolerated and disruption criminalised. One looks good on the news, the other works. The moment a protest might work, it becomes illegal, not immoral, not wrong, illegal. Because legality is where power hides when it doesn't want to argue. Look at the UK. In 2003, over 2 million people marched against the Iraq War. Biggest protest in British history. Cities stopped, global attention, and the war happened anyway.
Despite widespread opposition, the Prime Minister confirmed military action will proceed.
2 million people didn't fail. They were simply never the decision makers. Here's the joke. If protests worked, governments wouldn't let you see them from helicopters. They'd turn the cameras off and start negotiating. The US followed the same script. George Floyd, protests, millions nationwide, police stations burned, politicians knelt like it was a Pilates class.
We hear you. This moment will define us. Change starts now.
Budgets came back, policies stalled, structures stayed intact, because symbolic surrender is cheaper than structural change. Power will kneel for photos, but it won't bend for policy. Here's the trick nobody tells you. A protest that ends is not a threat, it's a schedule adjustment. If the system knows the protest ends at sunset, it simply waits for sunset.
Thank you for expressing your views. Normal service will resume shortly.
The system doesn't fear anger, it fears stamina. Media completes the illusion. They don't ask what changed. They ask, how did it look? Was it peaceful? Was it dramatic? Did someone cry on camera?
Powerful images tonight. A nation speaks.
And once it's been broadcast, archived and debated, it's done. A protest that fits into a news segment is already defanged. So when nothing happens afterward, people get confused. They say, but millions showed up. Yes, and then they went home. The system didn't misunderstand the message. It understood it perfectly. It heard, this will end. And as long as that's true, protests are not threats. They are pressure release valves, very loud ones, very emotional ones, but safe. Not because people are wrong, but because the system is patient. And once you see that, protests stop looking like demands. They start looking like forecasts.
Tensions ease as demonstrators disperse.
Which coincidentally is exactly how power prefers them. Here's the part nobody likes hearing because it ruins two different outfits at once. Petitions and protests are sold as opposites. One is polite, one is loud, one uses a clipboard, one uses a megaphone. But structurally, they're the same machine wearing different hats. A petition is democracy, at home, in slippers. A protest is democracy in trainers. But both are still walking on the same treadmill. Lots of movement, absolutely no distance travelled. Let's slow this down, because this is where the magic trick happens. Both petitions and protests are non-binding. That's the key word nobody puts on the poster. They don't compel action, they request it, and power doesn't respond to requests, it responds to costs. A petition says, please consider. A protest says, please notice. Neither says, this will continue until something changes. They're also time limited. Petitions close, protests end. Even the biggest marches have a start time, a finish time, and a train home. Power can wait. Governments have calendars. They know when the crowd goes back to work on Monday. Take the UK 2003. Millions sign petitions. Then 2 million people march through London against the Iraq War. The largest protest in British history. It's peaceful, passionate, historic, and completely ignorable. The war proceeds anyway, not because people didn't care, but because caring wasn't the lever. Same country, same outcome, different aesthetic. Now the US. Roe v. Wade. For decades, polling showed a majority of Americans supported abortion access. After the repeal, millions protest nationwide. Marches, signs, chants, hashtags, celebrities with megaphones. And the Supreme Court decision stands because courts don't count crowds. They count authority. Public opinion was loud, the structure was deaf. This is where people ask the uncomfortable questions. So, what's the difference between a protest and a riot? And why is the tone dictated by the media instead of factual events? Same anger, same cause, different insurance category. Notice how the definition slides depending on who's being disrupted. If traffic is delayed for voters, it's something we live with. If traffic is delayed for lawmakers, suddenly it's a security concern. The line isn't moral, it's logistical. Governments don't secretly fear protests. They budget for them, they police them, they issue statements about how important it is that people are heard, and in the same tone hotels use to tell you breakfast ends at 10. And that's why both petitions and protests are allowed to flourish. They're not threats, they're feedback forms. One is filled out online, the other is filled out in the street. Both are read, logged and filed under public sentiment, right next to the weather report. Different format, same power relationship. Once you see that, the frustration makes sense, not because people are wrong to care, but because they were taught the wrong tools. And nothing is more exhausting than shouting into a system that's already decided how loud you're allowed to be. This is where democracy turns into children's television. Because once you understand government terms, 2 years, 4 years, maybe 5 if they're feeling ambitious, you realise the entire system is designed around one assumption: you will forget, not forgive, forget. Time isn't just how long they govern. Time is the weapon. Every term is short enough that nothing truly structural has to be fixed, but long enough that everyone's angry about something else by the end. That's where false opposition comes in. Politics isn't left versus right anymore. It's caste A versus caste B, arguing on stage while agreeing backstage not to touch the machinery. It's a pantomime, literally. You've got the good guy and the bad guy rotating roles every few years, and the audience is trained when to boo and when to cheer. Same theatre, same script, different costumes.
We absolutely oppose this policy, which is why we'll keep it but rename it.
In the UK, you see it perfectly with surveillance. The Conservatives push the Snoopers Charter, Labour opposes it loudly, headlines, outrage, principles. Then Labour softens the language, keeps the powers, and suddenly it's balanced oversight. Same cameras, new logo, immigration enforcement, same story, public-private contracts, same companies, same invoices, different speeches. The argument isn't about outcomes, it's about branding. Now the US does the deluxe edition. Republicans and Democrats scream at each other over surveillance while renewing the Patriot Act. They argue about military spending while passing the budget, different press conferences, same votes.
This is a tough but necessary decision that we somehow all agreed on.
And the media plays referee, narrating the fight like it matters, who won the debate, while the policy walks quietly out the back door untouched. The real genius is how terms protect everyone from consequences. If something goes wrong, blame the last government. If something goes right, take credit now, explain later. If nothing changes, start the argument again next term. By the time people connect the dots, the cast has changed and the audience is told, you can't blame us for that. We weren't in charge then. Same system, new alibi. That's why meaningful change never survives a term boundary. It can't. The structure is designed to reset accountability before results appear. Elections don't replace power, they rotate performers, and the show must go on, because if the audience ever stopped clapping for sides and started watching the stagehands, the whole illusion would collapse. If this still feels abstract, let's put names on it, because this isn't new, this isn't a recent betrayal, this is a repeat customer situation. Let's rewind the last 20 years and look at the greatest hits. UK, this election will fix it. Edition, take immigration again, because of course. In 2010, the Conservatives ran on reducing net migration to the tens of thousands. Not stabilise it, not manage it. Reduce it to a number you could count without removing your shoes.
We will get immigration under control.
Net migration didn't fall. It rose consistently year after year, not because the goal was hard, but because the goal wasn't real. It was a slogan, not a plan. Then there's surveillance and digital identity. In 2005, 2010, Labour introduced ID cards. Public backlash was huge. Civil liberties groups screamed. Voters hated it, so Conservatives campaigned against it.
We will scrap ID cards.
They did scrap that version and then quietly rebuilt the infrastructure under different names. Data sharing, expanded databases, online verification, and eventually digital ID systems by another route. Same idea, new font. Free speech and online regulation. Another classic. For years it was we must protect free expression. Then it became we must protect people from harmful content. Then it became we must protect democracy itself. Same law, different emotional justification. The Online Safety Act wasn't an accident. It was a rebrand, and both major parties waved it through. Now the US. Let's start with healthcare. Barack Obama ran on healthcare reform. Hope, change, affordable care.
If you like your plan, you can keep it.
What happened? A partial reform written with insurance companies in the room that preserved the system while advertising improvement. Healthcare remained unaffordable. Insurance companies remained dominant. Campaign issue, still alive, because dead problems don't vote. Then immigration. Republicans campaign on border security. Democrats campaign on compassion. Both campaign on urgency. What do they govern with? Inaction. Border crises surge during elections, disappear into complexity afterward, reappear exactly on schedule 4 years later, not solved, not even stabilised, maintained. Free speech. After 9/11, it was security. After 2016, it was misinformation. After 2020, it was public safety. Different threat, same solution. Expanded surveillance, platform pressure, speech framed as risk. Democrats and Republicans voted together on surveillance renewals. They just used different words when explaining it.
A bipartisan agreement.
That's when you should be most afraid. Notice the pattern. Identify public anger, name it loudly during elections, promise urgency, win or lose. Declare reality has changed, do nothing meaningful. Repeat with better graphics. This isn't failure, it's choreography.
We didn't get the mandate. The situation evolved. We must be responsible.
Translation, we needed your vote, not your outcome. That's why every election feels like deja vu. It's not because nothing ever changes, it's because the issues don't change. They're preserved carefully like political antiques, immigration, healthcare, free speech, surveillance, cost of living. These aren't unsolved problems, they're renewable resources. So when a politician tells you this election is different, they're not lying. It is different. Different fear, different slogan, same ending. And the second the votes are counted, the audition ends, the costume comes off, and reality returns exactly where it was waiting, right where they left it. Now, here's the clever bit, because sometimes the government doesn't ignore you. Sometimes it does something far more sophisticated. It agrees with you, just not now. This is where power graduates from lying to administration, because saying no makes people angry, but saying later makes people tired. And tired people don't organise. They don't protest, they don't read 300-page consultation documents titled A Forward-Looking Framework for a Future Discussion about the Possibility of Considering Change.
We hear your concerns. This is a complex issue. We must get this right. We will conduct a review.
That sound you hear? That's democracy being placed gently into a waiting room with a clipboard and no pen. Process is sold as responsibility. In reality, it's a tranquilizer. Because once something enters review, it stops being political. It becomes administrative, and administrators are immune to outrage. You can't chant at a PDF. Take the UK. Public opposition rises, petitions explode, protests happen, media attention spikes, and the response is never no. It's always,
we will consult stakeholders, we will commission an independent inquiry, we will report back in due course.
Due course, the most dangerous phrase in British politics, because due course has no due date. It's a calendar that only exists in theory, like trickle-down economics or affordable housing. Let's talk real examples: online safety and free speech, huge public backlash, legal experts raising alarms, petitions with hundreds of thousands of signatures. What happened? Not repeal, not pause, a review, then a consultation, then amendments written by the same people who wanted it in the first place. Outcome, the law passed, just slower, quieter, with fewer people watching. Immigration again, because it's the gift that keeps being studied. Public anger peaks, hotels full, costs rising, petitions explode. Government response?
We are reviewing accommodation contracts. We are assessing long-term solutions. We are exploring options.
Exploring, like it's the Amazon rainforest, not something happening outside your local Premier Inn. Years pass, contracts renew, private companies get paid, nothing structurally changes. But technically, they're working on it. The US does the same thing, just louder. Congressional gridlock isn't a failure, it's a feature. Bills don't die dramatically, they don't get voted down, they just evaporate. They go to committee, which is where ideas go to retire.
The committee will study this further. There are jurisdictional questions. We must ensure bipartisan consensus.
Translation, we've hidden it somewhere you can't see it, and by the time you remember, it'll be an election issue again. Healthcare reform, gun control, surveillance reform, student debt, all massively popular in polls, all endlessly discussed, all permanently delayed, because delay preserves power without provoking revolt. And here's the really unsettling part. Sometimes they do act, just not in your favour, quietly, procedurally, while everyone's distracted by the performance. UK governments have advanced surveillance powers despite public opposition. US governments have renewed mass surveillance despite bipartisan voter concern. No riots, no speeches, just votes at odd hours, buried in larger bills, explained afterward as necessary.
This was a technical decision. This was unavoidable. This was in the national interest.
Which national interest? Because it never seems to be yours. Delay does something powerful. It teaches people that engagement is exhausting, that staying informed feels pointless, that every action leads back to the same holding pattern. Eventually, people stop pushing, not because they agree, but because they're tired. That's not apathy, that's manufactured fatigue. And it's far more effective than repression, because repression creates martyrs. Fatigue creates Netflix. So when you hear, "We're not ignoring you," believe them, they're not. They're managing you. Nothing is blocked, nothing is refused, nothing is denied. It's just delayed until it no longer matters. And by the time you notice, the moment has passed, the contracts are signed, the law is live, and the conversation has moved on. Which brings us to the final act. So let's zoom out, because once you see all of this together, petitions, protests, elections, false opposition, delays, it stops looking chaotic, it starts looking designed. Not designed to crush you, not designed to silence you, designed to manage you. Petitions don't exist to change policy. They exist to measure frustration. Protests don't exist to force outcomes. They exist to let pressure out safely. Elections don't exist to transfer power. They exist to refresh legitimacy. Each one is a gauge, not a lever, like the speedometer in your car. Very accurate, very detailed, does absolutely nothing to stop the crash.
Democracy in action, public engagement, civic participation.
That language isn't lying, it's just incomplete, because participation without consequence is theatre, and theatre is great as long as you know you're in the audience. This is the part people struggle with, because if petitions don't work the way you were told, and protests don't work the way you were told, and elections don't work the way you were told, then a lot of emotional investment suddenly has nowhere to land. That's not empowering, that's destabilizing. Which is why the system works so hard to keep you just hopeful enough. Hope is rationed very carefully. Too little and people revolt, too much and people demand results. So you're kept in the sweet spot, concerned, engaged, waiting.
We understand the urgency. We are committed to change. We must balance competing interests.
Balance, another word that sounds neutral until you realize one side of the scale always seems to be made of gold. Understanding this doesn't mean giving up, it means recalibrating expectations. You stop celebrating emails, you stop applauding consultations, you stop mistaking acknowledgement for accountability, you stop thinking they heard us, and start asking what would make this costly to ignore. That shift matters, because power responds to leverage, not volume, to persistence, not spikes, to consequences, not consensus. History doesn't move because everyone agrees. It moves because ignoring people becomes more dangerous than listening to them. And this is why now matters, because we are entering genuinely unprecedented times. Technologically, economically, politically, power is more centralized, narratives are more managed, distraction is more efficient than ever, which means understanding how these systems actually function isn't cynicism, It's this literacy. You know, you don't need to be angry all the time. You don't need to protest everything. You don't need to disengage. You just need to stop being surprised. Surprise is what keeps you reactive. Understanding is what keeps you steady. If this episode made you uncomfortable, good. Discomfort is at least honest. And honesty is already more than most official statements manage. Thank you for watching. Seriously, if you found this useful, interesting, or uncomfortably familiar, you can subscribe or don't. That part's genuinely up to you. Just remember, being informed about how these systems really work isn't pessimism. It's the best chance we have to make meaningful, positive change without lying to ourselves about the rules of the game. And if nothing else, at least now you know why the suggestion box keeps eating your notes,